Welcome back. I've got RT Custer online. RT, how are you?
I'm good, Michael. Thanks for having me.
I'm really looking forward to this conversation. Really, really important conversation to have for sure. So, why don't you share a little bit about you, your company, and then we'll dive into the conversation.
Yes, sir. So I run Vortic Inc., which is Vortic Watch Company and Colorado Watch Company here in Fort Collins, Colorado. We are a wristwatch manufacturing company and one of America's only watch manufacturing companies. So I'm just excited to be making watches here in the USA at what I think might be the perfect time.
It wasn't really that long ago where, majority of watches were birthed in the US. And then, I mean, yeah, there's, some of the big names that are, international. We understand those guys and they've been around for a long time. But, a lot of, you think, names of watches, and I'm not going to name any brands because they don't sponsor my show. So, but we're talking about your company. There is no other watch company. What are you talking about? There's only one, and it's yours. But manufacturing, and watches is just one example. For many years, um, we've outsourced a lot of our manufacturing to other parts of the world. But what's happened is, we know, and I try to stay away from politics and things like that. But the hard, cold truth and facts are, industry and infrastructure in states or across our country have struggled ever since we, outsourced so much manufacturing. So now, there's a conscious effort to, utilize, the skill set and the talent that we have, in our country to, rebuild and build new things and new innovation, not just from a physical thing like a watch, but technology and advancements in science and research. So, whenever I get an opportunity to talk with someone like you that are like, okay, you know what, we're going to go out here and we're gonna make this happen. It's always a great way to celebrate because, as we know, the backbone of our country is small business. Every business, the majority of businesses in our country are small businesses, and I don't want your business to be small anymore. I want it to be gigantic. So that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on the show.
Yeah, thanks for doing that. And yeah, I mean, going back 100 years when there were no wristwatches, it was all pocket watches back then, like 1850 to 1950. America was the Switzerland of the world. We made millions of pocket watches in the USA, and we can name those brands: Hamilton, Elgin, Waltham, Ball. Those were the great American watch companies. They're all defunct now, and just like many industries. America got away from manufacturing that advanced manufacturing is what we call it, or those tiny little parts that tell time. But obviously, the wristwatch industry is a massive, massive industry, primarily owned by the Swiss and the Chinese. And so, about 12 years ago, my co-founder and I were playing around to golf, and we started asking questions. He was a watch guy, and he was really interested in watches. I thought that was fascinating. I was studying engineering, and we started asking questions mostly of Google at that point. Why are all watches made in Switzerland? Why can't we make them in America? And we couldn't find a good answer. And we stumbled on the history of those old pocket watches. The light bulb went off. It was like, hey, we could upcycle those old pocket watches, turn them into wristwatches. And that's what Vortic is. Vortic is Vortex and TikTok, a beautiful clash of old and new, an antique American pocket watch that we turned into a wristwatch. We've been doing that for about 10 years. And then recently we started Colorado Watch Company because for Vortic, we can't make very many. We make a few hundred watches a year. It's very hard to turn a pocket watch into a wristwatch. And so for Colorado Watch Company, starting next month, I'll be at 500 watches a month. And so, it's very exciting at this point because there's a lot of energy and support for Made in USA. I've been making watches in America for over a decade, but right now I feel like I'm just getting started again. There's never been a better time to manufacture right here. And gosh, I'm like re-enlightened and like totally invigorated to go and figure this out and make watches here, not there.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing, and a lot of people, want things that are made locally because they there's a direct connection. It's community. It's like, okay, if I'm in Southern California, but I want an American made watch, I know where to go. And I'm supporting our neighbors, and that it grow, and what that does is that, and we know this, the math is easy. When you buy something, the ripple effect of what you're buying goes a long way. So if you're buying local, you're supporting local businesses, which improves the infrastructure of your community, which you want to be nice. I don't know many people that want to live in a rundown community. They want nice things, and we deserve nice things because if we're supporting each other and helping build up each other's businesses, it makes a huge difference. And we know that, the wave for looking for American made products is growing and has been growing. And I don't think it ever went away. I just think, like in the case of watches, for example, there just simply wasn't an option unless they bought an old pocket watch or maybe a wristwatch that may have been manufactured here, but in all likelihood, it would have been the pocket watches, which are cool, by the way, kids. There's something about pulling something out of a chain in your pocket and looking to see what time it is and all that. I know with technology and everything like that, everybody pretty much uses their phone for watches if they don't wear a watch. But for those of us that have always had a watch on our arm, it makes a big difference. And the fact that we now have coming soon the ability to wear an American-made watch again is not something to be overlooked. I think again, I think back to my grandparents and my parents and all of that. Buying American wasn't necessarily even in their vocabulary because pretty much everything they had access to was made here.
Yeah.
And then of course things changed. You can go through history and you can ask, Google or ChatGPT or whatever, why did this happen? And study history, learn from it because it's a complicated answer, but cost savings was one. But ultimately, it's created some obviously long-term challenges, which companies like yours are doing their best to, okay, let's turn the tide back to building the things that we want to use ourselves. That doesn't mean we won't buy things from other parts of the world. We're one planet, but the more that we can produce ourselves, the stronger our local and state and country, quite frankly, will benefit from it.
Yeah, and to your point, it's the tide, right? The tide, the rising tide rises all ships. There's I can't do this alone. Right now, that tide is my customers. We need people to vote with their wallet if they want things made here. They need to buy things that are made here. I say that all the time in our marketing and all the video content that I create about why we make watches here. It's that first. It's why would you buy an American made watch? Well, it's what it says about you. That thing on your wrist, it said you voted with your wallet and you are, creating an American job. And for me, all of that is the American dream. And I mean, I'm a dreamer. I wake up every morning. I get to do this. I don't have to do this. I could go get a great job as an engineer or a, high level executive any day. But I get to work for myself. I get to cut metal right here in this building. I get to employ a bunch of people making something physical that I can show and bring people in here and show them what I do. And it's just, yeah, it's a joy. I don't know why more people, don't get into manufacturing and making things with their hands. I think it's so much fun to work in the physical life and not have to mess with, you know, software and apps and all this kind of stuff that you can't even see. Don't get me wrong. We use AI, we use all kinds of software in our the system side of our business. But it is really, really rewarding to myself and my team to have something physical to show at the end of the day if we built this.
And I think that we're seeing that in the younger generations, especially ones that have, grown up with nothing but tablets and smartphones and everything digitalized. There's this, resurgence of I want something physical. A case in point, here's an example, the album industry,
Mhm.
records
Yes.
records are back and huge where I'm old enough to remember seeing them wane away out of music shops, and now you go into music shops and they've got the section with the vinyl again, and it's like, wow, I guess if you wait long enough, things return. And I would have never guessed it would, but people were like, no, I want something physical. I want to, and it's not just about the sound per se, because I know the sound in an album is very difficult to replicate in a digital format. They're really close in many cases, but there's just people that are like, no, I want this sensation. I want the physical side of things. And the same thing goes with, a timepiece, and actually seeing the mechanics of it. And, I remember as a kid, opening up a watch, or seeing my grandpa open up a watch because he was swapping out a battery or something like that, and I'm looking at, to me as a little kid, it looked like there's a billion pieces in this thing. It's
Right.
all moving around, and I had no engineerial aspirations, but I was definitely in wonder, going, how are all of these pieces moving together and in unison to you know to track time? And it's the mechanics of it is again is, and yeah, you said something there a moment ago. It's like you get to physically do something, and I think that's something I implore anybody here watching or listening, that maybe have not had the experience of building something or tinkering with something with your physical hands. Find something to do. Doing something on a screen, programming, coding, all that stuff. I'm not knocking that. It's important. The innovations that we have today, this technology we're using at this moment, was because people had interest in doing that. But there's something to be said about tactile. There's something to be said about going outside and playing in dirt, and maybe gardening or something like that. It's these are wonderful devices, and they need to be used in unison with what's in between the ears. That's where creativity happens. That's where innovation happens. And you said something a moment ago too, that it was like this, new way of manufacturing, and a new innovative way. Because easily, I mean, you could have said, okay, well, we're gonna build these watches. Okay, well, here's a template on how to do that. Done. AI did it for me. Done. But no, it's like, okay, what can we do with a timepiece, but make it also modern, obviously leveraging American resources to build something that is a big deal. And of course, we know, with people like the Kevin O'Learys of the world and all of that, interest in watches has skyrocketed over the last few years for sure.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. And yeah, Mr. Wonderful has one of our watches, and he made, to your point, he made a YouTube video about his Vortic watch. He has a Waltham pocket watch. And if anyone's from the Boston area, I just mispronounced that Waltham. It's still called Watch City, just outside of Boston. There's 40 million pocket watches made in that city between the mid 1800s and mid 1900s. And he made this, Mr. Wonderful, Kevin O'Leary made this amazing YouTube video just raving about this watch that he got. He got it as a gift from, a mutual friend that we both have. Um, and he was just like, it worked so well on TV. He wore it on one of the, a couple episodes of Shark Tank, filming Shark Tank, which is so cool. But, if you follow him, yeah, he talks about business, he talks about entrepreneurship, he talks about Shark Tank. Um, but he also talks a lot about watches, and he's not the only one. I mean, it's been fascinating to see, especially during the pandemic and then afterwards. I mean, people are really into watches now, and I think there's a mass, I don't want to say exodus, but a mass interest of people who, are used to wearing something on their wrist, like the Apple Watch or something like that, some kind of fitness tracking. And when they don't want their wrist to vibrate every time they get a text message, or they want to up level the look or the style or the feel of that, they have at least one nice watch. And they were maybe influenced by, someone like that, or they saw their favorite actor on TV wearing a certain watch. Um, or I think what happens with a lot of my customers is they're influenced by, a friend. We all have a friend, a coworker, a colleague that's really interested in certain things. It's funny you brought up vinyl. We were just talking about vinyl in my break room earlier. One of my employees has this amazing vinyl collection and a couple of different record players, and we were talking about why he got into that and how he's so passionate about it. Um, there's there's always a watch guy, somewhere that's like really into it, and their passion is infectious. And it starts to get people to dip their toes in, and really, all I'm banking on is that some of those people, it doesn't have to be very many, because even 500 watches a month, I mean, if I can get to 1,000 watches a month, that'll be massive. By next year, that's still 10,000, let's call it, watches a year. That's a drop in the bucket. Rolex makes 1 million watches a year. Um, and so all I need is a small amount of those people that start getting interested in watches to want them to be made in USA. And that's what I'm doing. And so when you Google search best American watch or American made watches, you're at least going to get an ad, but you're probably going to see me because there's not very many. And that's the other point and reason we used Colorado Watch Company, because that brand says who we are, what we do, where we are, and pretty much why we do it in 3 words. And so we're really excited to bring it back, to your point. It's been here the whole time. The American manufacturing, while some industries are kind of dusty, we can dust that stuff off and we can dive right back in and we can make it here. And I just try to be living proof that we can do that with wristwatches. Um, because if I can make a watch here, I mean, shoot, we can make a lot of things here.
Yeah, and the thing, I was thinking about this, and I'm glad you brought that back up. That came to mind is, we think about the history of our country, and go west, and we did. Our ancestors did, and Colorado is one of those states. Obviously with the gold rush and all of that, but it's just one of those states, and I love. I've been fortunate enough to visit the majority of the states. Every state has some absolute amazing beauty to it, or whatever its mantra is, or just the people, or whatnot. But when I think of out west, and in innovation and that pioneer spirit and that drive to make things better for humanity, Colorado is a state that comes to mind.
Yeah.
Just in an understanding the history, and I've learned more about history in my later years than I did in high school. I was too busy doing high school related things and didn't pay as much attention as I should have. But never stop learning. But I think that again, it's inspiring because it's gonna inspire other people that want to look at industries that used to be here, that used to thrive, that have went away, and look. It's like, okay, where's my opportunity? Where the fields are rich with opportunity, people, and there's, yes, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. If you come up with something new that can change humanity for the better, then by all means do it. But there's some things that we used to do that we don't do anymore that would be in demand and desirable, and be able to make a great living, and also provide jobs for people so they can have a good living. It's just what it's the backbone of our country. And I think that's why, one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on the show is because I'm a big time supporter of, doing great things locally, to help your neighbors and your friends, because it just helps, make the country more full and wholesome and supportive, and growing and prospering, because there's more than enough for everybody. And again, there's opportunities out there. Just go look at industries that used to be huge here that aren't, and go, okay, is there an opportunity for us to get a slice of that pie to do something pretty special? And that's exactly what your guys are doing.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks. That's what we're trying to do, and exactly why we do it. We are out here in the West being pioneers, doing different things, and yeah, creating American jobs, pursuing the American dream for me and my team, and all these people here. And yeah, I think that the ripple effect of just really being the proof that we can do it is really my next goal. Is let's be the proof that we can make watches here. Let's be the proof that people want to buy them, and prove that for us and others. So we see what's next. You know,
Awesome.
that's fun.
Awesome. Well, good stuff. I'm so happy and proud of you and love the work that you're doing. So, where can people find out more about you, the watches, and everything else, RT?
Yeah, if you want to connect with me personally, I'm RT Custer without the periods, just RTCUSTER on Instagram and LinkedIn. And then honestly, just Google Colorado Watch Company. We're the only one. You can get to Colorado Watch Company or Vortic Watch Company through doing that, but they are vorticwatches.com or coloradowatchcompany.com.
Awesome. I'll definitely have that in the show notes. So, RT, congratulations again on the success. Prepare to get busy. Not that you're not busy already, but you're going to get busy. You're going to be selling a lot of watches. So, good stuff, and really appreciate your time today. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks, sir. Thanks for having me.